That's okay, there is a television out there. The reason why we didn't move the meeting, we knew we were gonna have a big crowd, is we have a council meeting following immediately after this meeting is over, after this discussion is over. We televise all of our council meetings. We didn't want to not televise it if we moved to another location. So based on that, I will accept a motion to move the executive session to the end of the meeting. Moved by Councilman Carley, seconded by Councilman Camerata. Discussion, roll call, please.
Mr. Camerata?
Yes.
Mr. Carley?
Yes.
Ms. Hoffman? Yes. Mr. Gabatese?
Yes. We have one proclamation which I would like to read. It's a proclamation declaring August 2nd as National Night Out. Whereas the National Association of Town Watch is sponsoring a unique nationwide crime and drug prevention program on Tuesday, August 2nd, 2016, called National Night Out. And whereas the 33rd Annual National Night Out provides a unique opportunity for South Brunswick Township to join forces with thousands of other communities across the country in promoting cooperative police community crime prevention efforts. And whereas South Brunswick Township plays a vital role in assisting the police department through joint crime, drug, and violence prevention efforts in South Brunswick Township, County of Middlesex, and is supporting National Night Out 2016. Whereas it is essential that all citizens of South Brunswick be aware of the importance of crime prevention programs and the impact that their participation can have on reducing crime, drugs, and violence in South Brunswick. And whereas the Police Community Partnership, Neighborhood Safety, Awareness, and Cooperation are important themes of National Night Out program. Now therefore I, Mayor Frank Gabatese, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, August 2nd, 2016 as National Night Out in South Brunswick Township. And I call upon all citizens of South Brunswick to join the South Brunswick Police Department and the National Association of Town Watch at Roland Park on August 2nd, 2016 in support of the 33rd Annual National Night Out program. Just in case anybody doesn't know, we usually have 6,000 people. It's a good night for the family to be there. We welcome everybody to come. The next item on the agenda, we have one item that we're going to do before we get into the Williams pipeline, and that is ordinance 8636. Mr. Bidlack, do you want to just quickly give us a brief write-up what this is about?
Yes, sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is an ordinance that will that pertains to the design and architectural standards for multifamily housing. I've received some concern from the council that the current ordinance does not adequately address some of the some items such as facade design, orientation of buildings, and such in our current ordinance. So what I have done here is did some research, looked at our neighboring municipalities in Middlesex County, looked at some of their standards that the other municipalities have, and put together some proposed changes to section 62206 in our ordinance that covers the design standards for multifamily housing. I believe these standards will improve developments in the future for multifamily housing.
Black, our planning director, he's been requested by members of council to take a look at this particular ordinance. So I thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
We wanted to do this first so that Brian could go home and eat dinner. Any questions from council pertaining to this particular ordinance?
No, just a quick statement, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Bidlack, for working on this. You know, just some of the housing stock that we built in South Brunswick most of it is very attractive, and this is pleasing to the eye. Some of it, on the other hand, is, you know, stucco boxes, time goes on, I think it's appropriate that we have architectural standards, and these aren't draconian standards, they're guidelines, but it does get us around the stucco boxes in the future. So I think these guidelines, these requirements are appropriate and going forward. And again, thank you, Mr. Goodline, for your work.
Is there any other person on council wants a question at Joseph?
Not so much a question, just to follow Council Quality comments. Some was housekeeping, some of it was bringing it up to date.
Right.
Some I think was progressive. We thought the design, you know, depending on what happens with the affordable housing issues, you know, this is a good time to state this and put this in place. I think again, it's very progressive. Thank you for all your time.
Councilwoman, any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Brian, I want to thank you for coming and presenting this and doing the work on it. We'll move this forward to the next council meeting so we can vote on it. I don't have any other questions, so you're free to leave.
You're welcome to stay also.
You're welcome to stay.
I think I'll go home and eat.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Okay, now we can get into what we was here for. I just want to bring you up to date for exactly what has occurred in the past 3 weeks. 3 weeks ago, Councilwoman Joe Hockman and myself met with Williams, the corporation, with regard to what they had proposed to build in Franklin Township. We met in the manager's conference room. We discussed many of the issues that I'm sure all of you have expressed concern about, such as noise, such as the proximity of 1,000 homes in a half a mile of this particular proposed area. We also suggested that they may want to take a look at another site somewhere else away from the residential neighborhoods that they're now proposing, in an area that there are no houses. We certainly, this is a big township, and we think that there are areas that this would certainly be better suited and not affect the quality of life of our residents who have lived here for years. They also explained to us that they were going to have a presentation, I think it was on 2 weeks ago, I think it was July 28th, was it? In the Franklin Hotel, in the Somerset Hotel in Franklin. I know that many of you were there. I was there, Councilwoman was there, and they had tables set up to explain what their proposal was all about. We asked Williams if they would come to this council meeting. They didn't have to do that. We asked them to come to this council meeting to let council question them and the people of our township question them pertaining to their particular development that they're proposing right in Trap Rock, and we all know where Trap Rock is. I just wanted to say later on when we get into the public portion, we're going to allow the residents to get up and have their say, and hopefully they can ask questions of Williams. That I would ask that you not ask the same question, because otherwise we'll be here all night. We've got a council meeting that we really must finish tonight. So based on that, if I interrupt you and say, you know what, that question was asked before, you have to understand that there's a lot of people here and we need to get through this. So I want to thank the Williams company for coming. They didn't have to come. This proposal is really set for Franklin, so I appreciate your coming here to our council meeting to let council question you and to let our residents question you pertaining to this pipeline. Well, anybody got any questions? Council got any questions? We're going to let Williams have a short PowerPoint presentation. Please try to watch the screens and pay attention to what is being on the PowerPoint presentation, and then I will open it up to council, and then I will open it up to the people. Okay? Megan, you're on.
Thank you. Do I need to hold this down?
Sure, please, and you know what, why don't you introduce the dais?
Okay.
Introduce your dais.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Megan Stafford. I am in public outreach for Williams. So
my left, at the end, you've got Karen Olson. She is one of our environmental leads for the project. Next to me is Russ Markowski. He is our manager of operations for our Princeton division. To my right, you have Brian Ham. He's the project manager for the proposed compressor station. And on the end, you have Jamie Archer. She works in our air quality group.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you all for having us here tonight. It's a good opportunity for us to come and explain a little bit more about our project, a little bit more about our proposed compressor station. I think first it would be good for us to tell you a little bit more about Williams and a little bit about Transco. We are an energy infrastructure company that own and operate gathering and processing facilities and transmission facilities along the energy value chain. So we are a fairly large company. Williams actually touches about 20% of all gas that's consumed in the U.S. Williams is headquartered in Tulsa, with the Transco pipeline being headquartered in Houston. We have facilities all along the eastern seaboard. So Williams owns and operates the Transco pipeline system. It is the nation's largest system, delivering about 10% of the gas that is consumed in the U.S. What's once started as a 1,500-mile line pulling gas from the Gulf of Mexico along the eastern seaboard up to the city gates of Manhattan has now expanded to over a 10,000 miles of pipeline with 56 compressor stations and storage facilities, like I mentioned, along the eastern seaboard. Specifically in New Jersey, Transco transports about 60% of the gas within the state of New Jersey. We've been in the state serving them reliably for more than 60 years. Some of our major customers whom you might recognize are PSE&G, Southern Jersey Gas, Elizabethtown Gas, New Jersey, and New Jersey Natural, just to name a few. Transco in New Jersey, so specifically talking about our footprint here, we operate 552 miles of pipeline, and we have 5 facilities. They're in Old Bridge, Princeton, Carlstadt, Roseland, and the Shannon Station. In 2015, Transco delivered 390 million cubic feet of gas, which is roughly enough to serve 2 million homes. We operate approximately, we have approximately 100 employees that are employed at each of our locations in New Jersey. And in 2015, we paid approximately $12.4 million in property taxes. And on the map here, you'll see each of our 5 facilities, as well as along the Transco system. So just to give you a project overview about our Northeast Supply Enhancement Project, the project is designed to expand critical infrastructure in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. The customer for the project is National Grid, who is the largest distributor of natural gas in the Northeast. They have asked for additional capacity up to 400 million cubic feet per day, which is enough gas to serve about 2.3 million homes. So in order for us to do that, we have to expand our existing facilities in order to meet those deliveries that they've requested by the 2019-2020 winter heating season. So they see that there's enough growing demand for natural gas, and they need additional capacity to serve their customers. There are many project components that are associated with this project. It includes 35 miles of pipeline looping in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. Pipeline looping is essentially additional facilities laid parallel to where we already have existing infrastructure. So there's 10 miles in Pennsylvania, 3.5 miles of looping in New Jersey, and then a 22-mile line offshore that will be laid to our existing New York Bay lateral. We are making existing modifications to our Station 200 in Chester County, Pennsylvania, as well as proposing a new compressor station facility, which is what we call Station 206 in Franklin Township. This gives you a project overview map, which is a little bit hard to see on the screen. Many of you may have seen it at the open house, but just to sort of orient you to the map, what you see, the blue lines on the map are existing Transco infrastructure. Where you see the red lines, try to point them out here on the map. Where you see red lines is where we're doing our additional, we're proposing our additional facilities. So there's the 10-mile loop that's in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. There's a 3.4 miles in Old Bridge, and then 22 miles going offshore in Raritan Bay. And then you'll see our compressor station right here is our proposed compressor station in Franklin Township. So this just kind of orients you to the facilities that we already have in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and in New York. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission is our governing body, so they govern and determine whether projects can be built. So before we can modify or build existing, or modify existing infrastructure or build anything new, we have to get approval from FERC. We actually file an application with them. They go through their environmental review process and ultimately are the decider whether or not they will issue a certificate of public convenience and necessity. So typically it's a 3-year process from start to finish, from start once we enter pre-filing to when we officially go into service if we're approved. Under FERC's requirements, Transco is an open access pipeline system, which means we don't own that gas that we carry. We simply think of us like a trucking company. We move gas from point A to point B. We don't own the gas that we transport. We're business to business, not business to consumer. So we're not the folks that people write their checks to for their gas bill or for their heating bill. So in order for us to be an open pipeline system, that means if a customer comes to us and requests service, they can make a service request, and as long as they meet our gas quality and safety specifications and accept our rates, they can essentially, we can essentially then propose a project to build for them. We don't overbuild, so customers come to us for a request, and then we run specific models and do our engineering on the back end to then propose a project. On the right-hand side, you'll see the FERC regulatory process. This is just a high-level overview. There are many milestones that we have to go through as part of the FERC regulatory process. The yellow boxes that you see are those that are open for public comment. It's a very public process. We're in the first box, so we're very, very early in the process. We are in the pre-filing stage with FERC. So they have accepted us into pre-filing. During this time, that's our time to solicit input from the public. It's also FERC's time to hear from the public as well. We meet with various stakeholders, so the meeting where our folks came to meet with you and council earlier, we do meetings like that. Our open houses are included in that. So that now is the time for us to solicit input from folks. Then FERC will then conduct what they call scoping meetings, and so that's the public's opportunity then to also make comments to FERC. FERC will host these environmental kind of scoping meetings. And it's another opportunity for folks to put their comments on the record. We plan to file an official application with FERC. FERC will then issue a notice of our application, and then they'll issue what we call a draft environmental impact statement. That's basically their draft of their environmental review of our project. The public also can provide input to the document that FERC puts out. Then once they receive all the comments, they'll go back and they'll issue their final environmental impact statement and then ultimately decide if they're going to approve or deny the project. This is our proposed schedule. So in May, FERC accepted us into pre-filing. We have a pre-filing docket number, which is PF 16-5. A lot of folks have already started to put comments on that FERC docket. That's the best place to do it. In May and June, we started our civil, biological, and cultural surveys. In June, we held 4 public open houses. And then in the fall, those environmental documents that I mentioned before that are part of the FERC process, we plan to file those draft resource reports in the fall of this year. Then in the winter of 2016, we will file our air permit application with NJDEP. And then we plan to file our formal application with FERC in the spring of 2017. We'll be in that application phase for about a year. We hope to start construction in the summer of 2018, and then our proposed in-service is the winter of 2019. Now I'm going to turn it over to Karen, who is our environmental lead for the onshore portion of the project, and she is going to talk to you about permitting.
Hi, I just wanted to give you a quick overview and rundown of the major permits that we're anticipating for the project. As Megan mentioned, we'll be seeking a certificate of public convenience and necessity from FERC, and they're the ultimate decision maker on our project. In addition to that, we're going to need a permit under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act, and that is for a wetland bill, and that is delegated to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection through their Freshwater Wetlands Act. We'll also consult with the United States Fish and Wildlife Service regarding state or federally listed threatened and endangered species. In terms of state permitting, as I mentioned, we will be seeking a freshwater wetlands permit from the New Jersey DEP. a flood hazard permit, and a 401 water quality certification. We'll also be getting stormwater permits and construction dewatering permits. We would also consult with the Division of Fish and Wildlife regarding state-listed threatened and endangered species. And we would consult with the Historic Preservation Office regarding historic properties and artifacts. And the last item on the list is Division of Air Quality for air permitting, and we're going to speak to that a little bit later in the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I want to start out my portion of this presentation by giving some sort of basic information about what a compressor station is, what we're actually proposing for Franklin Township. Compressors, you can think of a compressor station as sort of the engine that runs the pipeline. It is the machinery that compresses and pushes the gas from point A to point B, which, as Megan mentioned before, is the business that we're in. We do not own the gas. We're simply moving it from point A to point B. The compressor stations are the mechanism that we use in order to accomplish that. On a mainline transmission system, what you typically have are compressor stations that are spaced about every 40 to 100 miles. Now, that's a pretty broad range, and we understand that here in this area, we have compressor stations that are spaced closer than that 40 to 100 mile range. It's important to note that in the Northeast, we have a lot of laterals coming into our system, bringing gas in, and also a lot of delivery points to Manhattan. As we have laterals and different delivery points, we have to increase the amount of compression in order to make those deliveries to all of our customers.
Excuse me, could you get closer to your microphone?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Is that better?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. The size of the compressors that we use varies depending on the diameter of the pipe, the volume of gas that we need to use. And most of our compressor stations, if not all, including the one that we're proposing for Franklin Township, is fully automated, meaning that all of the equipment within the compressor station can be controlled from the station's control room. One of the items I wanted to talk about tonight is that not all compressor facilities are the same. We recognize that there's a lot of information out there available. If you go and look up compressor station, you can find all kinds of various information. But it's important to recognize that we're not always comparing to apples. The analogy I like to use is sort of like how we say a car. There are many different kinds of cars, or say trucks. Many different kinds of trucks. They don't all take the same form. And I've got a couple of illustrations here. The picture on your left is a compressor station that would be typical for a gathering and processing facility. This is what you would typically see at or close to a well pad. So where they're actually where they're pumping the gas out of the ground, you would see something like what we have on the left. The picture on the right is a picture of one of our transmission compressor stations. This is station 166 in Virginia. This was, I believe this picture was taken shortly after the construction was completed at the facility. You can see that there are obvious differences between the two facilities. One of which that you notice right off the bat is that for a gathering and processing compressor station, the compressor units are out in the open. There's no sort of enclosure, and the only thing between these compressor units and any nearby residents would be the distance, the physical distance of their home from the compressor station. For the picture on the right, which is what we're proposing, you can see that there's a large building on sort of the right-hand side of the image. That's the compressor building. The compressor units are housed within that building, and which is a sound attenuating building. We'll talk a little bit more about that in subsequent slides. But as you can see, there's a large difference in compressor stations. There's a large difference in the amount of design that goes into these stations, and a large difference in the amount of regulation and oversight. We are federally regulated, as Megan mentioned. Once the compressor station goes into operation, we are no longer, well, I shouldn't say we're no longer overseen by FERC, but our primary oversight comes from PHMSA, which is the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, part of the DOT. I also wanted to go over some of the considerations or factors that we take into consideration when we are trying to identify a site for a compressor station such as this. Now, there are a lot of items on this slide. I'm not going to read all of those items. I do want to highlight a couple of items that we understand from the open houses were areas of concern. One of the things you see in the top left is the proximity to existing Transco pipeline. So we have an existing line, as we mentioned before, that's been in operation for many years. We are somewhat constrained by siting a facility as close as possible to that existing pipeline. We also look at property availability that can accommodate our needs. Access to electric power. One of the questions we received repeatedly was, why are we not proposing electric compression for this station? In evaluating our ability to get electric power into this site, we did speak with the electric provider. They did a feasibility study on this, and what it would take to get the amount of electricity in that it would take to run those electric motors could be very prohibitive to do that.
Prohibitive, you mean cost-wise? Is that what you mean?
No, sir, not necessarily from a cost standpoint, also from a regulatory standpoint. They're
Can you be specific?
Well, let's hold the questions
we
back.
can-
You
I
can
believe-
ask that
yeah,
question.
we can certainly address that later when we take questions. One of the other things that we do consider is nearby residents. As we look at the area that we are constrained to site a facility, both to the east and to the west of where we're currently looking, the land use becomes increasingly residential and commercial. We are looking at the trap rock facility and properties surrounding that. One of the reasons that we selected that area is due to the fact that there are, it's an industrial use already. They have large areas of open land surrounding their facility. I would also like to mention, and it's very important, in consideration of nearby residents, that being one of the main factors that we look at, we did hear the comments. We've heard the comments at the open houses. We've seen them registered on the FERC docket, and we are evaluating 2 different properties. That has not changed since the open house, but we did hear those comments. We are in a process of evaluating 2 sites where we're looking at trying to go to option B. But as you understand, and I'll go over later, there are some constraints with option B that we're trying to understand. And until we have enough information to make a decision, we have to continue to evaluate both sites. And it is a lengthy process. So I want to talk a little bit also about the station facility design. The picture that you see on here is actually an artist rendering. You can see that that's very similar to the picture that we showed previously, which is an actual facility. What we're proposing right now, as I mentioned before, is a compressor station. The compressors are fully enclosed inside of a sound attenuating building. Looking at and our plan would be to leave buffer trees. So other portions of this whatever site we choose that we're not clearing for construction and operation, our goal is to leave those sections of the property as is. We would be looking at approximately an 80 by 120 foot compressor building to house the compressors, along with several other smaller buildings. As you can see in the picture, the compressor building is the largest building on the site. The other buildings are relatively small. Power control room building, an office warehouse building, a drum storage building, telecommunications building and also a communications tower on site. And as I mentioned before, we are currently proposing 2 gas-fired turbines. One of the things that does is it provides flexibility and reliability on our system. Again, with some of the challenges that we're looking at with bringing power to the site. One of the big topics from the open houses were the site alternatives. As we went through the process of looking at the area along the pipeline where we could site a compressor facility, we ended up selecting 4 properties that are currently owned by Trap Rock. As we've gone through our analysis of those 4 properties, 2 of those have sort of dropped out. So alternative 1 is the large parcel sort of in the middle of it's the largest parcel sort of in the middle of the screen. We performed environmental studies on that parcel. The parcel is almost exclusively wetland. It's a very low-lying area, had very little usable building space. So we proved that out. We also have alternative 2, a 37-acre lot which fronts onto Route 27. We looked at that. We have not encountered any environmental issues thus far with that parcel. Alternate 3 is the site farthest to the north and east. That's also a large undeveloped lot owned by Trap Rock. In evaluating that, the site is immediately adjacent to an EPA Superfund site. We're currently evaluating that site for the environmental conditions that are present. We've gone through a phase 1 site assessment and are moving into a phase 2 environmental site assessment. What that does is it allows us to understand what those environmental constraints are, to understand if this is a property where we can safely both construct and operate a facility. Those investigations are currently underway. And then we have alternate 4. Alternate 4 is the farthest west. It is the smallest parcel, and in evaluating that site, it was ruled out due to limited space. There are some constraints on the site, a stream that runs through it, as well as preservation area for Franklin Township. So I wanted to speak a little bit more specifically about the 2 alternatives that are currently being evaluated. We've got it listed here as Site 2. That is the way it was filed with FERC in the information that landowners received and the township received. We referred to it as Site A and Site B. Site 2, what we've added here is the dashed line is a representation of where we would plan to place the facility on the site. So as I mentioned before, this is a 37 acre site. We're looking at clearing about 15 acres of it towards the middle or back of the site closest to the pipeline. That white dashed line represents the facility boundary. The goal, again, would be to leave the area that goes down towards 27 as is today. For Site 3, we've done the same thing. We've added this dashed line indicating where we currently believe we would place the facility if we were to go with this.
Thanks, Brian. My name is Russell Markowski. I'm the operations manager for Williams Transco. I just want to talk a little bit about station design. We will design and construct this facility in accordance with all applicable codes, standards, and specifications. Station 206 will be equipped with federally required and industry-recognized safety features such as pressure relief valves, emergency shutdown systems, and gas and fire detection devices. We will man the station during normal business hours, which are Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. The station is designed for remote operation and can be controlled and will be monitored 24/7 by our Williams Gas Control Center in Houston, Texas. We will have available personnel on call at all times. Our automation will include computerized controls along with backup mechanical controls, which can automatically shut down all equipment, isolate the facility from the pipeline, and safely vent any gas during an emergency. On venting and blowdowns, a blowdown refers to a controlled release of natural gas that is vented to the atmosphere. Natural gas, which is mostly composed of methane, is colorless, odorless, and later in air, rapidly rises and dissipates. We do add mercaptan which is an odorant, into the gas so that it smells and it gives it that rotten egg smell, so it can be readily detected for any kind of leak or problem, just like it is at your house. In an emergency situation or anticipation of any system maintenance, we will conduct the controlled venting of gas in the facility. While blowdowns are standard operational practice, they do not occur at regular intervals and would occur infrequently, possibly once per year at this location. Unit blowdowns are a little bit different for maintenance. They may occur a couple more regular, but it's a much less quantity of gas. And again, it's a controlled venting. Prior to any major blowdowns taking place, we would notify local emergency officials and nearby residents as needed. Gas normally is directed through a filter to remove the odorant and through a silencer to reduce any noise. There's been a lot of questions about sound. The facility will be designed in such a way that it's not noticeable to nearby residents. Per federal regulation, the sound emitted from our operation cannot exceed 55 dBA at the nearest noise-sensitive area, which will be our station fence line. The facility enclosure will include approximately 9 inches of sound buffering insulation. Prior to construction, Transco will conduct a pre-construction study to measure the existing noise levels at the location of the station. After construction, we'll also do a post-construction noise survey to demonstrate that the compressor station complies with sound requirements and any local ordinances. As I mentioned before, the station will be manned from 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. during our normal business hours. The area will be surrounded by a perimeter fence for secure access. It can be operated, as I said before, remote control from our Operation Control Center in Houston. We will have advanced security systems such as video cameras with pan, tilt, zoom, recording, intrusion alarms, coded keypads, access to the facility, and so on. The system will be monitored both by local personnel at the station and remotely by our gas control center. On our safety side, Transco has operated safely in Somerset County since the 1950s. Again, we'll be monitoring our facilities 24/7. Our facility will feature state-of-the-art automatic shutdown systems with redundancy. The facility will be operated and maintained in accordance with the U.S. Department of Transportation's federal safety standards. Design requirements based on its area classification, which are based on population density in the vicinity of the proposed facility. Our site-specific emergency response plan will be prepared in consultation with local responders. We will work with the local OEM, and Williams personnel will meet regularly with local emergency responders to provide training, walkthrough, and anything else they deem necessary. Currently, Transco is notified by Trap Rock Industries prior to any blasting activities which are conducted within 200 feet of our existing pipeline that's been out there since the 1950s. A comprehensive engineering analysis will be conducted to measure any potential impacts from blasting. The results of that analysis will be used to effectively mitigate any potential issues from the station's final engineering design. Thank you.
Good evening. We wanted to talk to you a little bit about what we're proposing for our state-of-the-art emissions control technologies.
How much longer you got to go?
This is our last slide.
Thank you.
Currently on the two turbine-driven compressors that are proposed for the facility, Williams is proposing to install SCR, that stands for Selective Catalytic Reduction, using urea as a substrate. That will control NOx emissions, oxides of nitrogen emissions. So we'll add oxidation catalyst, which would control CO and formaldehyde emissions. Technology is very similar to those that you see on cars and trucks that are used to reduce motor vehicle emissions. It's an industry standard. It's been used for decades in larger power plant and other compressor stations in other areas. We have up here on the screen a little diagram of how it works, and an oversimplified diagram of how it works. It's what we call an endostack control. It means that the gas is combusted in the turbine, and it's treated, the exhaust stream is treated with the urea substrate to reduce the emissions at the end of the exhaust. Right now, the way we have designed and preliminarily spec'd, we have qualified, we believe will qualify for a minor source permit and will not be subject to the higher emissions thresholds that would require a Title V operating permit.
We'd like to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to make this presentation tonight. We appreciate your time, the time of everyone who's come to participate. And we've got a slide here which we'll leave up that provides information on how you can subscribe to the FERC docket as a way to see all of the information that we provide throughout this process to our regulatory agency. These are public documents. It also allows members of the public to comment on the record regarding this project.
Thank you very much for all of your presentations. What I'd like to do at this point is to open it up to questions from council, and then we'll open it up later to questions from the public. Council, Charlie, you got it?
I think on more substantial questions after listening to the public, but you took a look at 4 sites that were owned by Trap Rock. Any of them to the north of the pipeline or just to the south of the pipeline? I'm talking about closer to the quarry.
Can't hear in the
I'm
back?
sorry. I'm sorry. Stinks so far away. And this is directed at the folks from Williams. You looked at the 4 sites that you went over, and it looks like you're leaning towards site 2, option A. How come you didn't look at sites that were on the lot where the quarry proper is? I mean, basically you're looking at forested lands that are undisturbed. Did you have any conversations with Trap Rock about being closer to the quarry?
We did engage with Trap Rock. One of the criteria that we consider is available property. In speaking with Trap Rock, they provided us with parcels that they were willing to sell, that were available from their standpoint.
At the discretion of Trap Rock?
Yes, sir.
And in terms of the one thing that came up a little bit before with your testimony, you talked about the way you power the plant was due to regulatory processes, prohibitions. What were they?
So just like we have a regulatory process that we undergo in trying to get approval for a project, the electric provider has a regulatory process. I'm not familiar with all the details of their process. I do know that in some ways it's similar to ours, and in speaking with their representatives, they have regulatory issues such as crossing the Delaware and Raritan Canal, crossing the state park there. There's a historic borough nearby, other historic sites. Those were among the few items that they cited as hurdles to overcome in the regulatory process.
And so you have a document from Public Service outlining those hurdles?
We have had conversations with them regarding this, yes. I believe so.
The one thing that the other gentleman talked about was monitoring existing noise levels and then comparing them to post-construction noise levels. I've been on this days now for 10, 12 years, and hardly a month goes by when you don't get complaints over here about noises that are generated by the industrial uses over at Trap Rock. When you're doing the comparison, are you going to say, well, it's X number of decibels now, and so we're just going to add a little bit more to it, because from the perspective of the folks that live here, it's not a good situation?
No, I believe when we use an outside agency to do the noise studies, they look at that as a baseline, but we'll look at what our station actually produces. So based on that, at our fence line from what we produce, it will not be over the 55 dBA. I'm not sure how he subtracts the ambient noise, I'll call it.
Yeah, the ambient noises.
Well, we can look into that and get back to you on that, but.
The ambient noise, disregarding the blasting, is an nuisance already. And I suspect that Copyright wants to hold on to its holdings that are closer to the quarry because they mean for that hole in the ground.
55, if I may just add a quickie here, 55 decibels, I hear this all the time from developers. We're only gonna go to 55 decibels. Well, 55 decibels is a normal speech from me to you, okay? And, you know, everybody says they're gonna maintain that level of quietness, and it never happens. Okay, to be very frank with you. So when somebody tells me that we're gonna maintain the 55 decibel level, I have a hard time believing you. After sitting on the planning board meeting for all these years.
That's 24 by 7, with 55 decibels. It doesn't stop, it's continuous operation.
And these are concerns that, you know, we have had on many developers who come into the township. Charlie, anything else you got?
Yeah, and I'll have to review it a little bit more, but the science, the chemical science of emissions is interesting, I guess, in terms of some of the terms that are passed on. When you say you treat emissions with urea, is that a biological byproduct?
I'd have to look that up, I'm not sure how it's generated. It's not urine.
Joseph?
Again, thank you for coming tonight. I'll start with Megan. Megan, first question. In your presentation, you spoke
Could you
about
get closer
national
to your
grid.
microphone, please?
I'm as close as I can get.
Do we have?
Okay, I'll yell. Megan, you spoke about National Grid requesting this expansion and the station. What is the process to going through the request? Is there a criteria that's implemented? They just want to, wake up one day and they want more.
No, National Grid
There has to be some kind of process, and how's that evaluated and discussed and,
There has to be commercial viability for a project. So National Grid is anticipating, because of the growth that's happening in the Brooklyn and Queens areas in New York, they see if they need additional capacities to be able to serve the growth that they're seeing in those areas and to be able to serve those customers for the winter 2019-2020 heating season. So what happens is they essentially will come to our business development folks, talk to them about their need. Business development then will work with our engineering and our project development folks to then basically run hydraulic modeling, work with engineering to see what we would have to do to our existing facilities to then meet the request that National Grid is asking for.
And how are those metrics determined? Is that residential, is that industrial, is it business? And who reviews, is that something that FERC reviews, or is that just something you review?
Well, FERC ultimately is the decider, yes, that decides that there is a need, there's a public need for it. Business development works back with National Grid. It's not something I believe that FERC reviews to determine. I don't believe that they would review any scientific or any documents that National Grid will put together.
But it is a viable need.
Correct.
It's not something they're projecting, and in other words, what's first? That's really the question I have here, and I'd like to maybe, if you have some of that information, you can pass it on to us. That'd be appreciated.
Sure, we can actually, we work closely with the National Grid to understand what their needs are, and so, yes, essentially, this project would be fulfilling their needs that they have, and so we work closely with them, and we can get some statistics and some facts to put together about how this would fit their growing needs.
Okay, great. And you spoke a lot about federal and state permits, requirements, subject to code enforcement issues. Any local taken into account?
We would work with the local municipalities to get certain particular permits, like for buildings and things like that. Because we are federally regulated, we are preempted from some permits. I'd have to turn it over to Karen to talk about any other additional permits we might need.
We make every effort to work within the local ordinances, so I can't speak specifically to any local ordinances.
Well, more to the point, what are you exempt from? is really something that we would like to know.
We can follow up, yeah, we can follow up on that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Brian, when you're going over the different possible sites, and I didn't really take a good look at alternate 4, but you mentioned it only was 19 acres, so you ruled that out. But in your discussion, I heard 15, 16 acres. If you were to, how much smaller would this station have to be in order for that site to be viable? And is that a possibility?
I don't really like an answer to that question directly because we're not far enough along in the engineering design. What I do know about the site, it was a total of 19 acres, but there were multiple things encumbering the property.
For example?
For example, a stream running through the property. The Township of Franklin does have some sort of preservation easement across the property. And then with the rules and regulations that we operate within, it is directly across the street from the Delaware and Raritan Canal, the state park, as well as a historic site, Rockingham Historic Site.
Okay.
Which are constraints for us in our permitting process.
Not to go back to it, the sites that you're looking at, in any case, if you're concerned about the Delaware Raritan Canal Commission and permit from that agency, you're in the review zone all 4 years.
Exactly.
That's correct, right?
I'm not certain. I do know that Site 4 is directly within that range or that area.
Everyone's reviews on that.
That's, that's something we got to take a look at also. I'm not sure, maybe this is for Russ. Obviously, we've been bombarded with a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, and you did, everyone, address some of them. Most of them are health related. And I know you spoke about air, Karen did, no, I'm sorry, Jamie did that. You spoke about noise and the different blowdowns, and you're saying possibly once a year. Is that an average, once a year? Has there been cases where it's been more than once a year?
In this case, we're using 2 units. A unit blowdown has a much more smaller quantity of gas compared to a station blowdown, which is all your piping, which then connects to the main pipeline. A station blowdown, which would be that larger quantity of gas, is less than a year, one per year. I haven't had one. I'm with the company 27 years. In the last 15 years, I haven't been around the station blowdown. When we test to make sure the station can blow down, we actually install equipment to block the gas. After we check the equipment that would actually let it out to the atmosphere, it'll hit what we call a blind flange and actually not go out into the atmosphere. So they're very rare. A unit blowdown for maintenance is a smaller quantity of gas, which is then scrubbed through a charcoal filter, which takes the odorant out of the gas and makes it odorless. So it's pretty much undetectable by the public. They may take place 5 to 6, and if the fire department was right there with us when we did a unit blowdown, you would have no readings at ground level, no readings picked up by any gas detection equipment. It's a slow, controlled, and like I said, a small quantity of gas. That may take place 5 to 6 times a year for maintenance. It all depends on what's going on with the units maintenance-wise.
One of the biggest concerns in terms of pollutants, toxics coming from the station, or is really methane. Obviously, that's a huge health issue, and potentially a explosion. Again, this is some of the things that we've been addressed and sent to us. How do you address that yourself? Has there been methane leaks over the last 10 years?
Again, concerning the pipeline that's in the area,
Yeah.
there have not been any leaks.
Well, I know the pipeline runs
area.
on basically the station.
Again, at our station, we operate on a no leak basis within the station, within the building, with our gas and fire detection equipment. If anything decides to start leaking inside the building, it's automatically picked up by the gas detectors that are at the roof level, which there are alarms, shutdowns, and all the safety things I talked about. Anything outside the building, again, piping that is connected via flanges or welded, we operate on no leaks. If there's any type of minor leak, it's corrected immediately.
Now, out of the 56 compression stations you have in the United States, how many of them have experienced any leaks over the last 5 years?
Again, minor leaks for maintenance, such as, you're working on a small piece of tubing or something like that. I'm sure there's been some minor ones. I don't have documentation for other stations. I operate 4 stations throughout New Jersey.
Oh, you don't do all 5?
Not all 5 stations though.
Okay.
And again, if anything is detected, it's immediately addressed. There's not outstanding leaks that just vent to the atmosphere.
Then let's say what's been the most egregious leak, issue, concern over the last 5-10 years, and has that shut down a station or closed a station?
Russ, let me add just
Yeah.
one minor thing.
Sure.
Most of our facilities are subject to what we call Subpart W in the air world, and that's our greenhouse.
Slow down, I'm sorry.
Subpart W, it's a federal program to monitor greenhouse gas emissions and report. And we don't have specific statistics for our entire system. We didn't come prepared to talk about that today, but you can access the information that we're required to report from all of our greenhouse gas surveys under Subpart W on EPA's website.
Has any station been closed?
No, sir.
No.
Even not for a short time?
No, sir.
Let me just make sure everything's okay. That's all I have for now. Thank you for your responses.
Councilwoman?
Yes, well, as many of you know, I live with this in my front yard also, because I live at Princeton Walk. And I've met with you guys from Williams now twice. And what I'm really concerned about is the noise factor, because Trap Rock says to us, residents, well, we only use a certain amount of explosives, that's all we're allowed to use. But sometimes the whole building shakes, and sometimes my pictures are moved, and I go around having to fix them. And sometimes things fall off a shelf. And it's because it's been an excessive amount that they use. Well, there's no one there that's saying to them, oh, excuse me, this last blast was a little bit too loud, you used a little bit too much, and therefore the residents were affected. Well, we're not going to know anything about what the sound is going to be like until this building is up and running. And you tell us, well, it's only going to be 55 decibels at that area at the time. But I want to say, what happens when Trap Rock is using a little bit more explosives than they should be? And we're on a call list. Many of us can call, and they'll tell us, oh, well, we're going to be doing some blasting today. But most of the time they don't till after the fact. So now we have Trap Rock blasting. We have your white sound, that noise that just continuously happens in the background. And we have an extra explosive that's going off. It's not going to affect what's going on in your compressor. If the paintings in my house are moving, what's going to happen with the compressor when there's an exorbitant amount of dynamite use?
So I do understand your concern. What I can say about that, I'm not familiar with Trap Rock's regulations. I'm not familiar with the regulations that they operate under and what levels of noise they're supposed to be at or anything like that. With the blasting, what I can say is that we've operated the pipeline in this area for over 50 years with the blasting that's going on that you described. And we're actually on the Trap Rock property with that pipeline. We've operated without incident, and adding the compressor station itself does not increase the risk of operating the pipeline or the station.
Well, what about the noise factor? when we factor in the fact that there's also a shooting range there, and we have to listen to that, and now we're listening to trap box blasting, and now we're listening to your compressor, and we call you and we say, by the way, we think your compressor is making more noise today. Is there a problem? Oh no, there's no problem. It just happens to be we're doing such and such. Well, you know, how much noise are we supposed to take? And I'm only dealing with the noise. I'm not going to pollution area because there are brighter people in this audience than I am that are going to deal with that. But I'm just looking at the noise factor because many times I have to shut my doors because I don't like all of the noise going on. And now you're bringing more noise.
So to address the noise concern, again, as Russ mentioned, we go through a series of noise studies, one of which being a post-construction noise study. I'm not familiar with who has oversight of any of the other property owners that you mentioned. However, I am familiar with our process, and we do have to provide those post-construction results to the PERC. In the event that our survey shows that we've exceeded that amount, we are required by federal law to mitigate that, which we would do. As far as you know, what you would hear, and I believe you described a white noise sound. The station will likely not run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Many of our stations currently run at what we call peak times. That would be in the coldest parts of winter and in the hottest parts of summer. Our customers are large distributors of natural gas to the public and also power generators. So anytime that lots of people are trying to heat their home all at the same time, there will be an increased demand for gas. This station would likely run. And then again, in the summertime when there's a large demand for electricity for air conditioners and things like that, this station would likely run. But I did want to point out, we're not anticipating a 24/7 operation.
And our compressors will be housed in a soundproof building. Our equipment will not be outside generating that noise to add to the other noise from that aspect.
Okay, well, that's all I have right now. I would like afterwards, then, if we have any questions.
We'll play this as we can here.
Okay, thank you.
Just a couple questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience. Number one, do you need to put an additional pipeline to run parallel to the ones you got in now?
No, sir, we're not proposing.
So you don't
additional pipeline.
need, I think you had mentioned earlier, that it was possible that you needed to run another line next to an existing.
Those other lines, we are adding pipeline we're proposing to as part of this project, but that is in Pennsylvania and in New Jersey outside of this area.
Okay, that's a good question here. Who's the primary users of this particular additional gas that you're going to be generating?
For this particular project, the customer is National Grid.
So, the primary users, are they in New Jersey or Pennsylvania?
New York.
New York.
Yes, yes, sir. This is
So
designed.
which one gets the most use here?
New York is the recipient of this.
Right, so New York is getting the greater, benefit of this particular facility, and yet you have it in the middle of a residential area in New Jersey. The additional, I was told also that the noise level inside that building is really terrific. Am I correct? Inside the building.
It's inside our own facility.
Right.
As a dB level, it could be above 85 dB. I mean, our guys wear hearing protection, but.
Right, so 85 dB,
Inside.
you'll go deaf very soon on 85 decibel level. So, I just want, that's a tremendous amount of noise. Outside, you're saying it's 55 or lower, correct?
Correct, at the fence line.
Yeah. Okay.
The building is specifically designed to be sound attenuating. One of the factors, one of the design factors is at least 9 inches of sound attenuating insulation inside the building to block that sound from going out.
It was interesting, the day that you had your presentation at the hotel,
Yes.
I happened to get a bulletin on my iPhone that said there was a gas explosion in the state of Mississippi that could be heard for 10 miles away. So that's a concern to our residents here. We're talking 1,000 homes in a half a mile radius here. That's a lot. So I need you really to consider looking at other sites here, especially, okay, as the Councilman Carley said, Trap Rock is a huge area. Let's get it in as far away from South Brunswick as we possibly can. Please look at that. I'm also been in contact with our state assembly people, just so that you know. I'm not trying to, in any way hide anything. They are very much concerned with this also, especially the assembly people and senators who represent our township. So I want you to be aware that they want me to contact them tomorrow to find out exactly what occurred here. I will do that.
Mayor, if I may, that they're here tonight.
Oh,
And Congressman Bonnie Coleman Watson represents, they're also here.
okay, I didn't, who is here?
They're out there.
Okay. Jack,
Get them in here.
I'm sorry.
If they wanna come in now, they can.
They can certainly come in. Okay, so based on that, what I want to do is I want to open this to the public. I only ask for a couple of things. Number one, if the question is asked, please don't ask it again. We'll be here until midnight trying to get our council meeting done. So let's limit the questions to, to what is concerning, and I know we have concerns, and then we'll have, Williams answer if they can possibly answer at this time. Okay? Okay. Please give us your name and where you live.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thanks for calling for this gathering, and thanks Williams and the rest of the team for joining us today. One thing I couldn't help but notice is much of these information, many of us here have done this research and have tried to understand the project because we all live so close by. What I see lacking is detail in terms of how big are the rest of the 5 stations, how many blowdowns are you having in those stations per year. We would like to see specifics. And when it comes to air quality, I was a little disappointed when you said you don't know why they use urea. Many of us here have read as much. I would assume that when Williams sends somebody here, they would send somebody who can answer our questions.
Wait till you get back to us. This proposal is not going to be done within a short period of time. So please write down these questions, and please, we'd like to get an answer back from you if possible, so that we can get the information to the people who are asking these questions. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't tell my name. My name is Vignesh, and I spoke to one of your Lee, I believe, from Land Acquisitions, previously requested her some information. She was nice enough to call me back and say that she cannot share that information, at least, right? But there was a denial in sharing information, but nevertheless. So the point is, I would like to understand how much of ton per year of these NO2, VOC, carbon monoxide, and all these emissions are going to happen from a station of this size. 32,000 is a much larger size compressor station than that I have seen in New Jersey anywhere this close to a residential area. Right? So I would like to understand exactly how many tons of these polluting gases that you are planning to release, or at least projected to be released, based on you running a large pipeline and so many other compressor stations. And I want to understand why you are not looking at 4075 Route 27 in Franklin Township 08540. That's up for sale, close to your pipeline, 41-acre lot, away from all of these residences. When I looked up the satellite map, there are hardly a handful of residences around there. If you wanted, you could buy those residences plus the 41-acre lot and put your compressor there. This is borrowing trap rock. This is borrowing your pipeline. I'm really surprised that all your 4 sites that you have considered are within trap rock, probably because it is cost prohibitive or whatever it is. I would like to understand the specifics of why you only chose these 4 sites and not the one that is a viable 41-acre lot very close to your pipeline at 4075 New Jersey Route 27, Franklin Township 08540.
You may want to take a look at that, please.
I'm sure that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, pleased to see you.
Same here.
Thank you. I want to thank the Williams Company. Yeah, I'm sorry. My name is Jeremy.
Just a second, Jerry.
Certainly.
We have answers to some of those questions. Would you like to?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Got the answers.
Okay, great.
I think this is Jamie, the air quality specialist again. I think maybe you misunderstood what I said. The question from Councilman Carley was, how was the urea generated? And I said I wasn't sure. I couldn't comment on that. It's not urine, if that was the way the question was phrased. The reason why we are using urea as a substrate as opposed to ammonia is because it's much safer. Ammonia is not friendly to employee safety. It's not friendly to get it to the site. Urea is very benign, and it is easy to transport, it's easy to store, and it's a lot safer for human health impacts when we're talking about how we add it into the catalyst system to treat the endostack emissions. So does that help understand?
Understand, but in my understanding, urea. In my understanding, urea also causes a lot of dead zones in the water, and there are a lot of wetlands, beside which you are constructing. So there is a possibility that this urea can create a lot of dead zones in the water and the wetlands surrounding, and I don't see any measure or anything to be able to protect. While you will get the clearance, I don't know how much of side effects are being evaluated when it comes to the excessive use of urea in the middle of a wetland.
So remember that this is still very early in the process, and the reason we don't have a lot of details to share with you right now is because the engineering phase is still ongoing. So any of the urea that's stored on site will have the appropriate spill containment, countermeasure, and control facilities around it that can contain the volume of anything that could be spilled or leaked from the containers on site, so that it will be controlled that way. To your other question about the emissions from the facility, this is going to be a minor source facility, which means less than 25 tons, compared to major source facility like Princeton University. So it's going to be very small emissions because we are controlling it so significantly with the SCR and oxidation catalyst.
So I have seen data where 8,500 horsepower station has generated more than 33 tons per year.
They would not be controlled emissions.
So
these are controlled.
So essentially, when, even then, in a residential area, to be able to release 25 tons per year of these toxic gases, and we are not talking about one, we are talking about multiple toxic gases in 1,000 family residential area, it doesn't seem like a minor thing to me, because the health hazard that the people will face, like, I forget this gentleman's name, your operations manager, he said it just vanishes in the air. Nothing vanishes in the air. It just comes right towards the
So one of I brought some New Jersey permitting experts who have a lot of expertise with the New Jersey state permitting process. Part of the process of getting an air permit requires the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection to do a health analysis. And can you speak a little more to that?
Yeah, let's what I don't want to do is I don't want, to go on with, we only have one person asking questions. I'd like to get more questions asked by the people. So if you can answer that quickly.
I can answer very quickly. My name is Susan Angle.
No, people on television are listening.
Is there
Here.
That's all right.
So to answer the question, as part of any air permit application in New Jersey, the New Jersey DEP requires a detailed analysis of what the emissions will be. And in addition to that analysis, they look at the health risk associated with the emissions. And they are not allowed to issue a permit that would exceed a certain health risk. So to answer your question, those emissions are evaluated, and this particular site we know will be a minor source, and it will not exceed any of the health
health risk thresholds or it will not be issued a permit by the NJDEP.
And just to follow up, you were talking about emissions. I did not say emissions vanish. I was talking about natural gas naturally dissipating, being lighter than air into the atmosphere. Natural gas by itself, not the emission component of the engine.
Still, it doesn't dissipate, it stays
Jeremy,
around.
Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Jeremy Pollack, that's P-O-L-L-A-C-K. I've been a township resident since 1974, 75, I'm not sure exactly. I'd like to address just a little bit deeper the issue of the noise. The 55 dB on the A scale, to be accurate, has been described as average in my discussions with the Williams staff. And by the way, thank you to all of the Williams staff for coming tonight. I know this is voluntary, and I hope the audience has not been too loud for you, because these meetings are usually conducted in a very, very nice way. And people need to be quiet so that everyone can be heard. So, getting back to the noise issue, 55 dB on the A scale on average. I want to point out that your home fire alarm on average has an output of 0. That is to say, it only makes noise when it makes noise. So when you talk about average, this is a very, very awkward way to describe how loud a sound is. The other thing, please no. The other thing I want to point out is I took a dB meter and I sat on the grass at the island at Promenade Boulevard and Route 27, which is very close to the Site A border that we're talking about. Of course, it's immediately opposite the Trap Rock entrance. Over a 5-minute period, I saw peak levels of 95 dBA, and I saw average over the 5 minutes into the 90 dB range. That means that we're not talking about Trap Rock's blasts to average with the sound levels, and this is all logarithmic scale, so those of you who understand logs can rationalize this a little bit better. The sound level from Trap Rock is not the issue, it's the sound level from all of the trucks and other equipment that's operating to do it. That means their grinder, their crusher. The blasts certainly make a lot of noise, but that's intermittent. And the noise that comes from the Williams facility, notwithstanding the noise abatement to the building, I want to remind everyone that basically what we're talking about is a jet engine. I'm not being exaggerated here. The engine that runs the compressor is a turbine engine. That means it's a jet engine. Now, it is smaller than some of the jet engines that we see at airports. The biggest ones, like for a Dreamliner, are about 50,000 horsepower. So normal commuter jets and things like that are in the range of the size of the turbine we're talking, or the 2 turbines that we're talking about here. And those noises are pretty loud, even with sound abatement. And the average level is not meaningful. It's the peak levels that we're talking about, and the peak levels that are added to the rest of the noise in the local environment. And I think that this will be too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Please give us your name and address.
Rich Cleary, I live in Princeton Walk. So you've been operating for 27 years. How many applications have you made to the FERC, and how many were actually denied as opposed to ones you may have dropped?
I don't know offhand how many applications in the past 15 years we've actually made to FERC. I don't have that information with me. We do, there have been dozens of projects that Transco has done over the years.